About 2 weeks back, I embarked on a competition with my buddy Wendell from over at Level 1 Techs, formerly from over at Tech Syndicate. And we did a video, we did an episode here of the Lunduke Hour where we kicked our formal competition off. And the idea was really simple, that we were going to put Linux on something that Linux does not normally go on, and then the community was going to vote about which one of us won based on some arbitrary random criteria. So I wanted to give you a big update on what I've been working on, a little sneak peek of what's coming, because I am having a ridiculous amount of fun with this, and I kind of just want to share with everybody. Before I do that, I wanted to talk to you guys just ever so briefly about a couple of cool things happening. First, my YouTube channel just broke 20,000 subscribers. I feel like a big boy now. I feel like there's people actually watching. Look at that. I don't know if you can see that on the video for those watching the video version, but over 20,000. Specifically, what does that say? 20,150. And I'm gaining like 100 to 200 subscribers every day. It's growing like gangbusters. Thank you guys for supporting all of this. That is absolutely phenomenal to me. I don't want to use the word humbled, because when does that ever really apply to me? But no, just kidding. But seriously, it's amazing. It's humbling. It's that you guys are watching and tuning in such large numbers to me sitting here just talking to fellow nerds about nerdy stuff. Yesterday's episode about the developer from the Haiku OS project really was just a lot of fun for me. And if you'd like to see more things like that, where we're just talking with people involved in, I don't want to use the word niche, but niche operating systems projects, various open source projects, hardware, software, anything, let me know. I find that absolutely fascinating, because that's a little bit outside of my normal world. I live within the world of Linux and free software. And while Haiku OS is free software, it's not Linux. It's very different from Linux. And branching out like that is just something I find to be absolutely tons of fun. I love installing the different systems. I love tinkering with them and trying them out and playing around. So if there's any that you would like to see me talk about, please let me know. In the YouTube comments, toss me an email, brian@lunduke.com. Hit me up on Twitter. You know how to find me. You can find me and let me know. Let me know if you like that. We also have a Reddit channel, or subreddit, I guess I should say, that's just Lunduke. It's r/Lunduke over on Reddit. And really, I just use that to post the latest videos and links and if any big news comes up. But that's a perfectly good place to get a hold of me as well. Just toss a comment in there, make a new text post making a request of what you'd like to see on the show, who you'd like me to talk to or talk about. I totally want to hear about it. The other thing I want to bring up is yesterday I announced that we have a podcast feed now, and that is only available for people who subscribe to me via Patreon. So people who pitch in monetarily to support the show. And I did that for a bunch of reasons, to basically to offset the time and cost of it and really allow me to help expand the studio. Because honestly, I'm making the show available for free. It's all Creative Commons, so you can download it and do whatever you want with it. So I've got to find some way to afford the expensive wall styrofoam and the new cameras and new equipment that inevitably crop up in traveling to different conferences. So this is one of the main ways that I'm doing that. And I'm absolutely thrilled with the response so far. It doesn't have to make $1 million. I've said that before. I'm not looking to get rich because I talk nerdy on the internet. But being able to fund all the hardware and everything really does make it a lot easier for me to justify it to my wife. Currently, there's 135 people that are pitching in. 135 people. I mean, that's not a lot. I mean, when you think in the grand scheme of things, that's not like there's millions of people saying, here's a whole bunch of money, doing some sort of crazy money bomb for this show. But 135 people sat down and said, at this point, hey, this show is worth enough that I'm going to pitch it $1. And that really means a lot. That really means a ton to me. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I hope you guys are liking having the audio link. If you look there on the, let me see if I can point to it accurately. Right about there, for those watching the video version, there's a little spot once you subscribe over on my Patreon page, which is just patreon.com/Brian Lunduke. and you can just copy a little private RSS link and add it to whatever. Even if you use something crazy like iTunes, I'm not going to judge. I'm not going to judge. You should be using a nice open source one, but it's cool. It's cool if you're not. There's lots of good podcast aggregators out there to use, and you can have a good time with it. So thank you to everyone who's been doing that so far. Huge high fives. Now, let's talk about my evil Linux-powered puppet. That's what I'm building to compete with Wendell over at Level 1 Techs. And let me show you the puppet here. I apologize for those people listening to the audio version of the show. Use your imagination and imagine a big, giant orange Muppet. You've probably seen this guy before. I call him Mr. Lunduke. He really is just he's a puppet that's breaking, apparently, because he's put together in part with lots of hot glue. But he's a nice, simple little Muppet-style puppet. And in fact, I based him off of a Muppet toy line that they call the Muppet Whatnots. And I got one and then just really decked him out. I put a Ninja Turtle t-shirt on him, meant for a toddler because he's about toddler-sized. Actually, well, kind of toddler-sized, except that his head is gigantic. So I got him a t-shirt. I want to say it's 18 months. It's an 18 months size t-shirt, but it was hard as heck getting the t-shirt over this huge noggin this puppet has. Then I put a blazer on him because that's classy and all that sort of thing. Anyway, so I've got this puppet, and I'm a terrible puppeteer. I've said that before. I really wanted to have a puppeting show. For a while, I had a show here on this YouTube channel where this guy, this puppet that I call Mr. Lunduke, would interview tech people, and that just amused the dickens out of me. But I'm such a bad puppeteer. I never remember to move the puppet's mouth with my hand when I'm supposed to be talking, so the puppet just sits there looking like he's surprised at everybody. Clearly, I need some technological help if I'm going to be utilizing a puppet in any way, shape, or form. So here's what I'm coming up with. First and foremost, I need a way to move the puppet's mouth automatically. I need to be able to detect the audio coming in through ALSA or Pulse Audio or any of the audio subsystems such as Jack and whatnot on Linux, detecting it, noticing as the audio grows in strength, so the peaks and valleys, and opening and closing the mouth correspondingly. That's actually a fairly difficult challenge. I watched a video from Ben Heck. If you don't know who Ben Heck is, look him up. He does a lot of really great maker videos over on the YouTubes. And he did a video similar to this. I think someone actually commissioned him to do some sort of an animatronic puppet. And he did it very fancy. He 3D printed a whole bunch of cool little like levers and whatnot to be inside the puppet's head and whatnot. And that's fantastic and was amazing and very inspiring. I'm a little bit of a different kind of guy than that Mr. Ben Heck. I'm more of the go buy off-the-shelf parts, find some sticks and some duct tape and make it work. So that's the approach I'm taking. So what I'm doing here is, in order to make the mouth move, I'm picking up, I've already ordered one. It's one of those little, what's the right word for it? A gripper. A nice little handheld long gripper where you squeeze a handle and then it grips at the end. Now I needed one that had a curve to it so I could put, and those of you looking at the video version can see, so I can shove the thing up the puppet's butt, right? Goes up the butt and into the mouth and has to be angled at 90 degrees so that it can open and close the mouth. Pretty straightforward. Well, it turns out those are actually kind of hard to find in adult style and sizes. So what I found was an alligator one with an alligator head that was like $4 off of Amazon.com. That's coming right now. It looks like it's going to be the right size. So basically the stick will go up the puppet's bottom. The alligator head will be in the puppet's mouth, and it'll basically be chomping down on the puppet's mouth internally. And I'll put a little padding in there so it doesn't rip up the puppet to open and close the mouth. Now, I'm hopeful that it can handle that. It looks like it should be able to. It doesn't need a whole lot of force, just a little bit to be able to make some movement there. So that should work. Now, that's great, but really all that gives me is an ability to hold a handle right underneath the puppet, right about where his crotch would be, and squeeze, and then his mouth would open and close. And that's handy. That gets me a step of the way there. But I also need to get some sort of a mechanism to grip down, some sort of an automated clamp system to grab onto that handle of that alligator gripper to open and close the puppet's mouth. And I think I figured out the parts for that at the local electronics shop. I'm going to head down there. There's a really good one close by that has a lot of like PC surplus parts and electronics and manufacturing parts there. So I think I'll be able to pick that up for just a couple of bucks, attach that using a copious amount of duct tape and electrical tape, I'm guessing, to the handle. Now, I still need a way to trigger it and power it. This is where I've been playing around a little bit more. So initially, I thought, wouldn't it be cool to base this around a Raspberry Pi? So I've got this old Raspberry Pi that I used, and those seeing the video version can kind of see the little unit I've got. I put it in this nice little multicolored case with a very small LCD screen. It's a little like, I want to say 3 inches, thereabouts. Old cell phone, small cell phone style LCD screen. And I think this is a Raspberry Pi 1 or 2. Yeah, maybe it's a Raspberry Pi 1. And really, that's powerful enough for what I need. So what this really has to do then is on its little GPIO, on its little out pins, I need to use that to trigger that little clamp to grab down onto the handle to make it close and to open when I want it to. Fairly straightforward, pretty simple. So I wired this up, played around with it a little bit, and there's a couple of problems with this approach. The first is that the Raspberry Pi, the battery life isn't phenomenal with the batteries I have. I could get a larger external USB battery for it, and that would solve some of that problem. And the other issue I have is the LCD screen I have on there, which I like having because it makes debugging this whole process much easier, uses up all the little out pins that you see right along here. So I would actually have to disassemble this and go screenless, or I use a different kind of a screen in order to make this work with the Raspberry Pi. So that was a little bummer. So I'm putting the Pi off to the side for the moment. And then I thought, you know what? I do have, and I think I've showed this on the show before, this little pocket chip. Now the pocket chip is kind of interesting. It's a very small little board. You can see that in the video version here. I think the pocket chips cost, for the chip itself, the little tiny system on a chip, it's very, very small, much smaller than a Raspberry Pi. I think they cost $9. Now the pocket chip itself is a little bit larger than that. It's shaped more like kind of like an oversized original Game Boy. And the cool part about it is it comes in with a really nice battery to start with, and it gets exceptionally good battery life once the screen turns itself off. And so I can basically do that and run this with the screen off for many, many hours off of that. And what's even nicer is, and I'll show you here on the video version, see if you guys can see that here. Across the top of the pocket chip, it has a labeled series of all the pinouts available on the chip itself, mapped from the board that's inside the pocket chip itself up through this top little panel on the very top of the pocket chip unit, on the top of the handheld unit. Which means that all I have to do is just hook a little wire in through these individual little pinout holes into the right ones, and I'm good to go. I've got GPIO 1 through 6, I got SPI, I've got everything. I've got multiple grounds. It's good to go. So I can wire it up with this, and this pocket chip, much like the Raspberry Pi. So the Raspberry Pi is running a version of Debian currently called Raspbian. Though honestly, if I continue with the project, I'd probably put OpenSUSE on here just because I'm an OpenSUSE board member and it feels weird to do this project than anything else. But with the Pocket Chip, it has a version of Debian on there that can hit the full Debian ARM archives, because it's an ARM-based processor, to put whatever I want onto there, which is convenient. So now what I can do is use applications basically to script up some tools to manage the opening and closing of the gripping of the handles. That should be fairly straightforward. I've looked into that enough to where I feel pretty confident that that's not too big of a challenge once I head down to the surplus store and buy all the parts I need. Might take 1 or 2 trips depending on whether or not I buy the right parts. Now, but where do I go from there? So once I have it to the point where I can open and close the mouth, And I can do it via scripted way because I have, and here's the really key part here, I have an SSH server running on the chip with Wi-Fi. So this pocket chip, and I'll show the video version of how I'm doing this here, literally goes right up the butt. And it barely fits. It barely squeezes in, but it goes right up the butt of the puppet. So the pocket chip goes right in there. It has enough space to fit right alongside a gripper handle and a little bit of a motor, assuming it's not too big of one, to clamp down on the handle of that gripper. And we should be good to go. So then I can SSH into my puppet, which is just a fun phrase to say. So I'll have a puppet. I can sit down on my laptop and SSH into my puppet, log into my puppet, and then issue shell script commands that will allow me to open the mouth and close the mouth. Very simple. Gets me a good step of the way there. Lets me automate a lot of stuff. But now I still need to be able to monitor the volume, and as the volume changes, open and close the mouth correspondingly. So as the output volume goes up, mouth opens. As the volume goes down, mouth closes. That's going to get a little bit tricky, and I'm going to need to play around with it a little bit. I've conceptually got that working, and I'll go into that a little bit further using Jack. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to check this into a project up on GitHub, because I don't know if there's anyone else who needs such a ridiculous application, but in case anyone else wants to build their own extraordinarily creepy puppet, I figure I'll put all my scripts and whatnot up on GitHub to play around with. But so it's pretty simple. Now, I can already conceive of a couple of possible problems here. If the volume is going up and down too rapidly, then I could see maybe the little motor engine not being able to quite keep up. Maybe it can't operate that fast. We'll have to see how that works. So I might have to put a couple of pauses in there for operating the handle. We'll find out how that works. Luckily, I've got a few weeks still. I think I've got about 21 days left from right now, so 3 weeks to get this all sorted out. But that gets me a good step of the way there. So as long as I can then play back audio on the device, which I could theoretically do even using a simple music player. So I could use CMUS, a little command line music player, to play tunes, spoken audio files, even just this podcast, and theoretically the puppet would move its mouth accordingly as if it were me speaking, which is weird, but I think in theory it should work. Now, there's a little bit of space in the head behind where the gripper is going to go. There's a little bit of space in the head, a very small amount of space. We're talking only about 3 inches, maybe 2.5 inches in total. And so what I'm thinking I'm going to do is I need to get one of those small USB speakers, or even not a USB speaker, though I suppose that would work just fine because the Pocket Chip does have one standard full-size USB out. But it also has an audio out. So even just a small USB speaker that'll take an output from a little mini audio jack. Put it behind the mouth, so that way when audio comes through the Pocket Chip, it'll go out through the mouth of the puppet. So then the mouth is moving and audio is emanating from right behind the mouth. So it'll actually kind of come from the puppet. It might sound a little muffled because it's inside of a puppet, but really, aren't puppets always sounding muffled? Anyway, so that should be pretty cool. That will give me the ability to have a puppet that is essentially fully automated. Now, one thing I've noticed about me is that while I can't seem to manage to remember to open and close the puppet's mouth using my hand when I'm doing it, one thing that I am pretty good at is using the puppet's arms to gesticulate around, to say, hey, everybody. They have little poles. Let me see if I can show you here. In the video version, you can see this is the puppet's hand, and in the side of the puppet's wrist is a little hole. And inside that hole, you shove these big metal rods. And I don't have one handy there across the room. But they're basically just black metal rods. And you shove them in there and hook them in. And then you've got little metal rods that you can use to move the puppet's hands around. So then if I want to, I can just use those so everything can be automated. I can just talk, put the puppet in front of a camera, and wave the puppet's hands around correspondingly, and let the puppet's mouth be fully automated based on the words coming out of my mouth. This is pretty fancy in my personal opinion. But it's not crazy weird. Like, it's weird, but I feel like we could get weirder with this. Since we're already creating a number of little simple utilities to open and close the mouth, and we already have a system in place where any audio piped out through the system, any audio output at all, will open and close the puppet's mouth, why not go a little nuts with this? Let's use eSpeak, right? Now, let me see if I have eSpeak installed on this system to give you a little example of what I'm talking about here. eSpeak is quite possibly eSpeak. Let's try this here. So you say something like, "Hello, my name is Mr. Lunduke."
Hello, my name is Mr. Lunduke.
Oh, yeah. So now you're starting to see something we can do here. So now eSpeak, available right out of the Debian repositories, will use that very, very old school text-to-speech style, that crazy computer that's going to take us over 1980s speech style. And I can now send those commands. I could easily script it up to say, okay, launch the shell script that powers the, or launch the shell script or application that powers the motor, based on the audio volume, and then start sending eSpeak commands. Anything I want, any text I want. So I can issue commands and have those sorts of crazy things. Hold on, like this.
I fart in your general direction.
There we go. I fart in your general direction. I can have him say anything I want and have him move his mouth. And that's creepy and funny and weird. But let's go a little bit further with it, shall we? Since I can do that, what if I could give people the ability to put words into this puppet's mouth and make it talk? So I started plunking around a little bit. And there's an awful lot of quite excellent command line Twitter clients. Oh yeah, you see where I'm going with this. So come February 28th, which I believe is the end date for my little competition with dear old Wendell over at Level 1 Techs, the goal is you'll be able to tweet this guy's custom Twitter account and have him speak in that horrible 1980s style text engine and move his mouth and be alive. You could control him. Then I'll set a webcam up and live stream the sucker. So that way people can hop in and have conversations, have the puppet say whatever they want the puppet to say, and the puppet will say it to the masses as it is live streamed. And then afterwards, I'm thinking what I can do, I can use the recording setup I've got right here to put on one half of the screen, kind of like this. Where I'm at right now, for those watching the video, will be the puppet, and then on the other half of the screen will be the Twitter feed. Oh yeah. So you can see people tweeting at the puppet and having a conversation with the puppet, and the puppet then parroting back everything that's said to it. It'll take a little bit of work. I'll have to customize the script a little bit. That's checking the Twitter account for how often it pulls the Twitter account, how to take out all the the ats and the replies and whatnot to just only speak the text that's sent to it. But I think it should be quite awesome. And that alone, I feel like, is going to crush poor Wendell and whatever crazy idea he's got in mind. Last I heard, he was working on something very cool with a waffle iron. And that's cool. That's cool, Wendell. But do you have a super creepy, going to take over the world, Skynet-style adorable Muppet that will eat your soul and can be powered via Twitter and live streamed on the internet? I think friggin' not. And here's the real clincher. I've got one extra little tidbit in here that I'm going to save until right before we launch, because I want to surprise Wendell with this. I want to make this as weird and as ridiculous and as creepy as possible. So, I do I tell what I'm thinking? No, we save it. Sometimes you got to save good things, right, my friends? So I'm going to save some additional stuff, but that's what's happening with the puppet. The only downside to this whole thing is that I'm going to be using my beloved pocket chip to power my puppet, which means this guy is pretty much out of commission for a couple of weeks. And I am super bummed about that. And just to tell you why I'm bummed about that, I thought I'd explain to you how I use this ridiculously low power little Linux handheld every single day lately. So this handheld, the pocket chip, like I said before, the computer that powers it is incredibly low power. It costs $9, I believe, and it's amazing. It has, I want to say, 512 megs of RAM. I mean, it's pretty underpowered. I mean, it's not a beefy machine by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're running a lot of terminal applications, it's just about perfect. So what I do is I turn this guy on, and I load up an SSH server that starts when the machine starts up. And then very quickly, the display turns itself off to go into power saving mode. Now, with the display off, this little machine, which has a keyboard that's kind of funky, it's a very steampunk style keyboard. You can kind of see it right there. And it's not an easy keyboard to type on by any means. I mean, it works. If you're out and about and you need to type in something into your terminal, it totally, absolutely works. But it's not an easy thing to type on. It's a thumb keyboard and with a little weird membrane bumps, and it's just kind of funky. The screen's on, it's nice. It's fairly low resolution, but it's a good size. But so it turns that screen off. I'm not using the keyboard built into it all. And that the battery life when the screen is off is just so long. I can be out and about all day, and it's fantastic. And then, do I have any of my other machines nearby? Of course I don't. And then I use whatever I have with me, my tablets, my UMPCs, etc., to SSH into my pocket chip. Crazy, I know, but if you have an Android device, an Android tablet, you know that you can install a wide variety of mechanisms for running Linux variants, Linux repositories on your machine. Things like the GNU root Debian or Termux. Termux is a really great Android application for those sorts of things, but you can't necessarily do everything you want because really you're not running a generic-y Linux desktop. You're running Android, and there are some real limitations there. But this little pocket chip doesn't have those limitations for running those sorts of terminal applications. You just run straight off of the Debian repositories and rock and roll. And it is extremely handy. And I'm kind of simplifying this because it's somewhat possible as well on the Android tablets, but not quite how I like it. And I like to be using a variety of devices depending on my location. So when I'm at home, I'm on my laptop. But a lot of times, I'm on my laptop, SSH'd into my pocket chip, getting some writing done using Word Grinder or even just Nano sometimes. And when I'm out and about, pocket chip's still with me, unplugged, plenty of battery for the rest of the day, and I SSH into her, assuming I have either a wireless connection wherever I'm at, like a nice hotspot that I can connect both the pocket chip and my extra device to, or if I have a little Wi-Fi hub with me, which sometimes I carry around with me, I can just easily SSH into this device and have a good time. And it's fantastic because then I always have a device with me that has all the tools that I need to do my work, to do my play, to have a good time. And I keep all the files on it synced using an own cloud client up to my next cloud instance that's running on my server. So then I keep all these files backed up at all times. And it's just an absolutely convenient way for me to work. It's not normal. I know it's not. I know many people will listen to that and think, oh my gosh, there are so many more efficient ways to do what you're doing than that. But it's just my style. I like working this particular way. And it really does work well for me. But this guy's going to be out of commission because this pocket chip is going to be jammed up a puppet's butt for the next several weeks. What happens after that, I really don't know. we'll see what people think of the ability to go to Twitter, tweet at a puppet, and have it say something creepily back at them. Then I'll record those videos and put them all up on YouTube so people can go and watch like a 12-hour marathon of people telling a puppet what to do. It's a ridiculous idea. And I'm really hopeful that I absolutely crush Wendell. I just want to crush him. He's a really good guy, but I want to crush him because I want to win. This particular contest has no real rules to it. It is just going to be voted on by the community. So I'm hoping that something shoved up a puppet's butt that makes a puppet extra creepy is going to help the community vote for me over whatever Wendell comes up with. And here's why. If you don't know who Wendell is, he has made many, many cool bits of custom gear over the years, even some recently. And the reality is he's better at this stuff than I am. A lot better. So much better it's ridiculous. Which means my only chance at winning this competition is to out-funky him. I need to come up with something that's so much weirder than what he comes up with that it makes everyone go, damn, I gotta vote for Lunduke. I would vote for Wendell because his implementation is obviously technically superior and more usable and useful, because it undoubtedly will be. No matter what he comes up with and how much time he spends on it, it will probably meet those criteria. But I'm hopeful that what I come up with in my little random laboratory filled with duct tape and children's toys is significantly weirder and funkier than what Wendell makes. And I'm hoping that that propels me to victory. Fingers crossed, everybody, because that's all I really got. Now, we got a couple of things coming up over the rest of the week. I'm not sure how they're going to pan out because today I was supposed to have a particular guest on the show, and he had to cancel at the last minute. Totally okay. We had one guest cancel last week, too. Things happen. When I'm doing a show every single day, sometimes guests aren't going to be able to make it. But tomorrow and the next day, we have tentatively scheduled someone from a system on chip manufacturer that makes some really cool stuff that I kind of want to talk to. And the day after that, I'm hopeful that the LibreOffice folks will be on. So fingers crossed for that one. It looks like everything's coming into place for that. So here's hoping for that. Now, what else we got going on? This coming weekend, I'm going to be heading down to Denver, Colorado, because I'm going to go hang out with the folks down at System 76. I can go see what they're doing, going to look around, going to poke at some things, going to make a big old mess in their place. And I'll take some videos of it, and we'll put that as one of the shows for next week so you can see what a Linux-focused hardware manufacturer looks like on the inside. And that's just kind of a neat thing. I feel like we're going to get a good little inside glimpse into what it's like to build Linux-focused hardware. So hopefully we'll get some interviews, some whatnot. It'll be good stuff. And that's about all I got for today. Many people will hop on the YouTube and say, hey, this episode is only however long it's going to be, 39 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe even not even that. And they'll say, hey, this is not an hour-long show. Why is it named the Lunduke Hour? And they would be absolutely right. They would be right to make fun of me for naming the show the Lunduke Hour when half of the shows are less than an hour and the other half are just right about an hour. And that was kind of part of the joke. When I originally thought of the show, I thought there's a real chance that some of these episodes will go crazy long. And there's a real chance that some of them will be crazy short. And either way, we get to make jokes about how, oh man, listening to the Lunduke Hour feels like 3 hours. You know, those sorts of jokes. It lends itself really well. I liked the name, so we're sticking to it. But anyway, feel free to keep making those comments and those jokes on YouTube. I really don't mind at all. And that's all I've got for today. I want to thank everyone for hanging out with me. And again, thank you to everyone who's supporting me over on Patreon or that tosses me $1 here or there on YouTube. I want to apologize. If someone does want to donate to me on YouTube, I don't have a good, easy way to provide my audio RSS links to people who donate to me on YouTube. Patreon kind of helps make it a lot easier for me. So if you do donate to me, as annoying as it may be, I recommend doing it through Patreon just because it helps me track things easier. It makes the audio RSS links for me. It makes them individually for each person, kind of automatically once I get the shows uploaded into their system. It just makes it a lot simpler. So if you are thinking about contributing to the show, that's probably the way to go. Now, that's all you're going to hear about the Linux-powered Puppet for at least another week or two. I'll give you another little heads up, little behind the scenes on what I'm building let's go 2 weeks. Let's go 2 weeks from now, whatever date that is. That'll give me about a week before the grand unveiling of the final one. And I'll show you a few more bits and pieces of how it's working and probably how it's duct taped together really sloppily. So that'll be kind of exciting. And that's all I had for this week. I want to thank everyone again. This was awesome. Back here next time tomorrow. Same time tomorrow. Next day. Next time. You know, you get to the end of the show and you find it's just hard to use words. It's just really hard to use words. So I'm not going to use any more words.